Hi, Kathy. Let's see. Okay, I don't know who Fortune 2 is, so whoever that is going to have to let me know who you are because I'm not just admitting someone I don't know who it is.
I'm not hearing anything.
All right. Laura, Brian, can you hear me? Laura, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. If I'm supposed to know who Fortune 2 is, somebody's going to have to tell me. I know that that's been a problem in some places with some of these things where um, uh, people crash a Zoom meeting, and so I don't know who that is. Um, not trying to be difficult, but that's just the way it goes.
Huh?
Hey, we have our first outdoor participants tonight.
Hey, Brian, you know your phone's on too?
Well, I thought I saw his name pop up there twice, but I thought, well, maybe I just missed it the first time. Okay. All right. Well, it's good to see everybody tonight. Again, I'm really sorry about last week, but I'm glad that we can get back going here. Um, I think we've got uh, everyone who, at least I was expecting tonight. At least those who let me know that they were going to be uh, showing up rather. So, well, if Fortune 2 decides to identify themselves, then I'll admit them later. But we're going to get started. We are live streaming on Facebook again tonight, and I've been working on some of the technical bugs. What I realized 2 weeks ago is that when I switched over to my slides as we were going through Bible time periods, that essentially the live stream on Facebook page just froze. It wasn't doing anything, and so I think I've figured out a work around that. So hopefully those who are following with us on Facebook can join in that part of the study as well. And Rachel Ferguson gave us a suggestion on how we might be able to sing. She said that thousands of music teachers have tried to figure it out, and there is a system that pseudo works. So she's able to join us tonight. So when we get there, we're probably going to do it because someone who is participating in this class suggested that the adults needed to learn the Judges song, and the guilty party shall remain nameless to protect them. But I thought it was a great idea, and the only way you learn the Judges song is to sing the Judges song. So we're going to try that here in just a little while. So here's what I would like to do tonight. I want to take a quick run through the 17 Bible time periods, since it's been 2 weeks, and then we're going to do a little bit of drill with those, like we did 2 weeks ago, where I'm going to give you a Bible time period, and you tell me which one comes before it and which one comes after it, or vice versa. I might change it up a little bit, and then we are going to talk about. We might do the Judges song, and then we're going to start putting Bible books, or at least and in some cases not even whole books, sections of Bible books, into their Bible time period. Okay, so that the idea is that if I call out a Bible book, then okay, that goes in this time period. Or if I say this time period, then I need to be looking in this part of my Bible. That's where this really becomes practical and useful, because parts of the Bible are laid out chronologically, but a lot of it isn't. And so we're trying to give everything context, okay? And then we'll just keep adding layers to that. But that's what I thought we would do tonight. So I'm going to try to switch this over. All right. Can everyone see the 17 Bible time periods screen? The white screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes. Well, no. It's on Facebook, but it's not. It's not on.
Oh. All right, hang on. I'll get there. Now you should be able to see it. All right, give me 1 second here. I thought I had this worked out, but apparently I was wrong. Okay. All right. So let's see how we do on our 17 Bible time periods. I'm going to try to expand this so that I can see and talk to everybody at the same time. Oops. Too many devices. Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, hey, Jeremy, Fortune 2 is Sharon Harris. I just saw this on Facebook.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's helpful to know. Then we're going to go over here and admit her. And we are going to do this. Okay. All right. So let's see how much we remember. Sorry, it's taken me a few minutes to get coordinated this evening. Okay. So let's see how we do with our 17 Bible time periods. Let's just start from the top. All right. Can you all see the 17 Bible time period slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. So from the top, first 5 chapters of the book of Genesis. Let's start with before the flood. The flood.
Scattering of the people.
The scattering of the people.
The patriarchs.
The patriarchs.
Exodus.
The Exodus.
Wandering in the wilderness.
Wandering in the wilderness.
Invasion and conquest
of the land.
The invasion and conquest of the land. Good.
Judges.
The Judges.
United Kingdom.
United Kingdom.
Divided
Kingdom.
Judah alone.
Judah alone.
Captivity.
Captivity. I can tell Diana's had a lot of practice with that. The return from captivity.
Years of silence.
Life of Christ.
There, I see Allie. The life of Christ.
Early church.
The early church.
Letters to Christians.
Letters to Christians. Good. All right, so let's run through those again. I can't do the hand motions and click my slides at the same time. So I want to, if you haven't already unmuted yourself, I want you to unmute your camera so I can hear everybody. And I'm trying to watch the video at the same time. So from the top, the first one is before the flood. The flood. The scattering of the people.
Patriarch.
The patriarchs.
The Exodus.
The Exodus.
Wandering in the wilderness.
Wandering in the wilderness.
Invasion and conquest of the land.
Invasion and conquest of the land.
Judges.
The Judges.
United Kingdom.
United Kingdom.
Divided Kingdom.
The divided kingdom. Judah alone. Captivity.
Return from captivity.
Return from captivity.
Years of silence.
Years of silence.
Life of Christ.
The life of Christ. The early church.
Letters to Christians.
And letters to Christians. All right, good. All right, now one of the things that we haven't spent a lot of time with is talking about, well, we did a little bit when we first started this, is talking about the connections from one Bible time period to another. And that's really important because if you remember the connections, the flow of thought, then it's not just memorizing a list of events, but if you can get started, then you can follow through and remember the other 17. So it's really obvious. If you can remember the first one is before the flood, really that's the only one you have to memorize. Before the flood. Because if the first one is before the flood, then logically the next one is going to be the flood. And you think about the flood and God saving Noah and his family in the ark from the waters of the flood. And after it, the earth had been destroyed. God wanted them to repopulate the earth and told them to spread out, but they didn't do that. And so God kind of had to force their hand. And so that leads to the scattering of the people. And that brings us particularly to the story of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And that's the period of the patriarchs. And when you get to the end of that period of the patriarchs, you have particularly the story of Jacob's family, and especially Joseph at the end of the book of Genesis, and the patriarchs go down into Egypt. But that's not where God wants them to stay. And so that leads to the Exodus. And even though God brought them out of Egypt to take them to the promised land, they rebelled against God, and so they had to spend 40 years wandering in the wilderness. But at the end of that 40 years, they were able to invade and conquer the land of Canaan. And after they got settled in under the leadership of Joshua, things started kind of going wrong. And so God would have to punish them, and then they would cry out and ask for a deliverer, and God would raise up a deliverer, and the deliverers were the judges. And after a while, they got tired of the judges, and we want to be like everybody around us, so that led to the United Kingdom, the first kings, and then there became problems with that, and that ended up leading to the divided kingdom. And after a while, the northern kingdom rebelled so much against God that God sent them into captivity, or rather, he really just took them away altogether because they never really came back, and that left Judah alone. And eventually, Judah fell they fell prey to all of the same devices of Satan, made all of the same mistakes, so they went into captivity. But God wasn't done writing the story yet, so after 70 years, he brought them back from captivity. And that brings us to the end of the Old Testament. But between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament, you've got 400 years of silence where God's not speaking to the people in Revelation like he had throughout the Old Testament and into the New Testament. So you have 400 years of silence, and then when you get to the beginning of the New Testament, it explodes on the scene with the life of Christ. It's all about Jesus. And Jesus, as part of that life of Christ, is making preparation for the establishment of the church. And once the church is established and begins to grow, God's appointed apostles and prophets are writing inspired messages, letters to those Christians, teaching them more and more how they ought to live and the hope that ought to burn within them. You see how those connect together? And so if you can remember where it starts and just kind of follow the Bible story in your mind, and you can have the entire 17 Bible time periods. And you can literally tell the Bible story, not in every detail, but you can tell the Bible story in about 5 minutes, like I just did, or less, really. And it gives everything its place. It gets everything its context. So you're not just talking about random stories of Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, and Deborah and going, who are those people? Or you're not just randomly talking about Saul, David, and Solomon, or Isaiah, or Daniel, or Ezekiel, or Paul, and go, where does all that fit? The other great advantage of this is not only organizing our own Bible knowledge for our own study, but this is also a really important teaching tool. I don't know if I've ever used this analogy before, but when you get ready to, how many of you work jigsaw puzzles? I know my wife does. How many of you work jigsaw puzzles? Okay, so even if you don't work jigsaw puzzles, what's the first thing you do when you get ready to start a jigsaw puzzle? What's the first thing you do?
Corners and edges.
Corners and edges, right? And I would even go one step before corners and edges. I would say you look at the outside of the box to see what the picture ought to look like, okay? And then you start corners and edges. The reason for that is you need a framework, right? You got to have a place to start. Because if you just start in the middle, randomly putting pieces together, you don't know what it's supposed to look like to start with. And so it's just it becomes an exercise in frustration. But if I have this picture, I say, oh, okay, that's what I'm going for. And then I begin to build a framework that I can then fill in. Right, that's what this process is all about. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to take my keynote slides down here. And we're going to do some quizzing. Let's see. With the exception of maybe Sharon, I think everybody participated in this process last week. So if you don't want your voice to be heard, at least let me see the hand motions because I'm going to call on people. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a Bible time period. I'm just going to pick one at random. And what I'm going to ask you to do is give me the one that comes before it and the one that comes after it. Or I might change it up and say what comes after it, what comes before it, just to make sure everybody's paying attention. All right. So, are we ready? Let's just start our review process. Okay. Last time we did this, I think I started by picking on elders. So I'm gonna change this up a bit. I'm gonna start by picking on kids. Okay, so Allie, since you looked at your sister instead of volunteering yourself, I'm gonna give you the first one. Years of Silence. What comes before it and what comes after it? Okay, Return from Captivity comes before it, and the life of Christ comes after it. Very good. Okay, all right, Ella, your turn. The Divided Kingdom. What comes before it and what comes after it? The United Kingdom before it. Judah alone after it. Very good. All right. Oh, look, we have a four-legged participant tonight. Would he like to participate? Let's see. All right. All right, let's see. All right, Ferguson boys. All right, Chase. All right. Let's see. What about the early church? Remember, this is the early church, the people. What comes right before the early church? This person came to get things ready for the church, to tell us it was coming. He said, I will build my church. What's the one that comes before the early church? Who came to build his church? That's right. That's right. The life of Christ. That's right. We're talking about Jesus. Very good. All right. And Hunter, so we got the life of Christ, and we got the early church, and the very last one we talked about, Hunter, what was that one? Remember? We did this. What did we say? They were writing what? What were they writing? Letters? Were they writing letters to Christians? Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Let's see. Laura, the Exodus. What came after the Exodus and then before the Exodus?
After the Exodus was wandering in the wilderness.
Okay. And before it?
Before the Exodus was patriarchs.
Good. Okay. All right. Vicki Wilson, what about return from captivity? What came before return from captivity and then after the return from captivity?
Captivity came before and Years of Silence was after.
Good. All right. Jim Wilson, how about the scattering of the people. What came before it and what came after it?
Before it was wasn't the one the scattering of people before it was the Exodus.
No, you're thinking of wandering. Instead of scattering, you were thinking of wandering. That's okay. All right, the scattering of the people followed. Before it was the
flood.
The flood. Good. All right, and then after the scattering of the people is the period of patriarchs. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're not, don't worry, you're not the only one who's gotten wandering and scattering confused. I've done that before. Okay, Diana, how about try to pick something that we've a part that we've not really talked about yet. What came? All right. Before the flood, what came before and after before the flood? God, that's a good answer. I think I can read your lips. Yeah, that's right. I was just going to see what you would say about that. All right, so before the flood and then the flood. The word that was in my mind was, I don't know, eternity. But anyway, yeah, okay, good answer. Let's see. Who haven't I picked on? Aaron Ferguson. The Judges. What came after the Judges? What came before the Judges? He's living over there on the edge of the screen, hoping I can't see him. Okay. Yeah, good. All right, invasion and conquest, and then the Judges, and then the United Kingdom. Good. All right, Rachel. What about the patriarchs? What came before it and what came after it? Good. The scattering of the people before it, and then the Exodus. Brian Baker. What about captivity? What came before captivity and after captivity?
Judah alone.
Good.
And then return from captivity.
Good. Judah alone and then return. Alan Rich, how about the life of Christ? Before it and after it?
Before it, 400 years of silence.
Good.
And after it would be the early.
Good. All right. And Kathy, what about wandering in the wilderness? Before it and after it?
The Exodus and after the conquest of the land.
Good. Okay. I think we've pretty well covered most of those. All right. So what I want to do now is I want to start giving some Bible context. In other words, some book and chapters to our Bible time periods. Okay, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do next. So, if you'll give me just a second, we're going to start by doing. Sorry, hang on just a second. We're going to start by doing the easy ones. Okay, just so that you kind of figure out where we're going with all of this. So we're going to actually start with the New Testament Bible textual part of this. Okay? So, now I would really encourage you to memorize the 17 Bible time periods. Okay? And again, if you can remember the 17 Bible time periods, remember the kind of the connective tissue between them, then that becomes a lot easier task. I would encourage you to add on to that to memorize what parts of the Bible go in each of them. Now, when we get to the next level and start talking about specific events, people, places, and things that go into each of the time periods, that gets a little bit more challenging because it's more information. Okay? But if you can memorize the 17 Bible time periods and the parts of the Bible that go in each of those, I can't tell you what a useful Bible study tool that really is. So let's do the New Testament because it is easy. Okay, so if I'm going to say, if I say the life of Christ, what parts of the Bible text go with the life of Christ?
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
There you go. Okay, I didn't think that was a trick question. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's what goes with the life of Christ. Sorry, again, I'm juggling things here. Sorry about that. Okay, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay, those are the Gospels. That's the good news. That's what tells us about Jesus. That's the life of Christ. All right, so that's pretty easy. If I move on to the early church, what part of the New Testament tells us about the early years of the Lord's church? What is a historical account of the early years of the Lord's church? The book of Acts. The book of Acts. And then, if we're going to talk about letters to Christians, what fits into that final category?
Romans to Revelation.
Romans to Revelation, everything else. Now, sometimes somebody will kind of get hung up on the book of Revelation and say, well, is it really a letter? And my answer to that is yes. Not just because of the specific 7 letters to the 7 churches of Asia, but the whole book was a message from God to Christians to tell them about the persecutions that were coming and to give them assurance of the ultimate victory that they would achieve. And so for simplicity's sake, I think we count that in letters to Christians. All right. So let's see if we recall that. Okay, pretty simple, but we're going to do this the same kind of quiz way. Okay, I'm going to give you a book of the New Testament, and you tell me which Bible time period it fits into. All right, everybody understand the rules? This one's even simpler than the last. All right, so I can barely see. Oh, that's Stanley and Sarah. Sorry, it's that little box is dark. I forgot who was there. Sorry about that, Stan. Sorry about that, Sarah. Okay, so
That's okay. I'm used to being forgotten.
now you make me feel bad. I can see that there's a person there, but I literally cannot see your face. I don't know if it's my screen or. Okay, Stanley, I'm going to give you a book of the Bible. You tell me what part of the New Testament, what Bible time period of the New Testament it goes into. 3rd John.
That would be letters to the Christians.
Good. Sarah, the book of Acts.
The early church.
Good. Jim, Romans.
Letters to Christians.
Okay. Vicky, Galatians.
Letters to Christians.
All right. Diana, Matthew. I can't hear you. Give me the hand motion. Okay, good. Okay, I still can't hear you. I don't know what. Okay, but yeah, Life of Christ. Good. All right, Alan, John.
air condition.
The life of Christ.
The Life of Christ. Good. Brian, 2 Peter.
Letters to Christians.
Laura, 3 Corinthians.
What'd you say?
I said 3 Corinthians. That would be the Apocrypha, which is not one of our. Okay, I was just kidding. Okay, but and I'm using the New Testament because I want you to see the general idea. Now, the New Testament is really easy. It breaks down nice and neat because it is essentially, well, it's not purely chronological, but it fits the flow of our Bible time periods. Does that make sense? Some of the letters to Christians historically fit into the time period of the book of Acts. In other words, you can say this book was written at about this point in the story of Acts. We'll talk about that later. So it's not arranged purely chronological, but the overall organization of the New Testament fits our Bible time period, so it's pretty easy. The Old Testament gets a little bit more hairy, but it's doable. And again, what I want us to be able to get to is when I say Daniel, well, I know that fits into the period of the captivity. Or when I say Nehemiah, I know that's return from captivity. And when I say Genesis 1 through 5, I know that's before the flood. When I say Genesis 11, I know that's scattering of the people. If I say Genesis 50, I know that's patriarchs. And so when I, as a preacher, say open your Bible to, like I did this morning, we're going to start in Joshua chapter 6. Well, not only do you go Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua. Oh, okay, there. But you go, okay, that's before the flood, and the flood, the scattering, the patriarchs, the Exodus. Okay, wandering in the wilderness. You don't even have to go through that whole sequence, but you know what we're talking about. You have a historical context of that book. Now, you might not remember exactly what happens in Joshua 6, but you know in the big picture where we are in the story. And that's the idea. So next week we'll begin into the Old Testament Bible time periods and starting to put books and chapters into their proper context. Okay. Zoom is warning me that we have less than a minute to go, and I didn't get to the Judges song tonight. Don't worry, I won't forget, and we'll do that next week. Okay? But before we just completely and totally get cut off, I just want to say thank you. Glad to be back with you this week. And as long as there is interest in continuing to do this, I'm all for it. We brought up the idea of possibly doing this or something like it on Wednesday nights. I'd like to hear your feedback for that. I'm completely open to that. Not as an alternative to the midweek message, which I'm going to continue to do because that has an even broader audience. But just another study like this on Wednesday evenings. If there's any interest in that at all, please send me a text or an email. Let me know. That'll be the easiest way to communicate and for me to gauge that interest. So I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for doing this. The Bekejian girls are all looking tired, so we're going to let them go to bed now. All right. Love you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
All right. Bye-bye.